gentlemen, I am the CHALL, your Doncaster Rovers fan and YouTube sporting journalist. Welcome to another Matchday Launch Show. We are excruciatingly happy with the show that we've got coming up this week. We've got a lot to get through, so let's see what's coming up this week. I'll be looking at the history of Doncaster's opponents this weekend, Northampton Town. I'll be reviewing the Salford City match for my player ratings and final thoughts. I'll be predicting the rest of the games for Matchweek 6 in Sky Bet League 2. And I'll be previewing this weekend's game with BBC Radio Northampton sports journalist Jake Sharp. This episode has more thrilling moments than a brace from Hursty. Good on you, Hurst. All that and much, much more is coming up on this week's show. We're going to get started straight away with the Salford City match. We won the game 2-1, a brace from Kyle Hurst. What a game that was. Salford City, for me, just didn't look... I mean, to be fair to Salford, the first 15 minutes or so, they did look the better team. We were awful in those first 15 minutes, and then we clawed it back. What a first goal at the end of that first half from Kyle Hurst. Then the second half, brilliant through ball from the top lane, Hurst off the shoulder, and overall just a really, really good finish. Overall for me, I personally feel like he's got a really great opportunity now to really show what he can do. You know, really wise words reported in the press this week going into that game that led him to have that performance and get his first goals in senior football. And, you know, Carl, for me, is a great young talent. I think it's definitely Birmingham's loss that he's here on a permanent rather than a loan deal. I think it's our gain and their loss. So it's going to be really interesting to see what happens this week and what he can do off the back of that performance, especially against a tough Northampton team that are unbeaten themselves and I think just one place above us, so it's going to be very, very tough for him. But we'll see what he can do after the performance last week. But for me, like I said, we apart from the first 15-20 minutes and maybe the last few minutes when we start to look a bit sloppy at the end, I think we were definitely clawing our way to be the better team in that game before that. And you know what? Even though Salford didn't bring a lot of fans, fair play to the ones that travel, because, you know, to just still travel and support your team, even though you haven't got the numbers, to still try your best to make some kind of noise is, you know, applaudable, to be honest. I think Salford did their best, so you know, we'll see what happens going into the reverse fixture over at Salford. You know, I can't wait to travel to that one, Salford away. That's gonna be a brilliant game. But no, overall, like I said, for us, I think we were the better team apart from those first 20 minutes and the last 5-10 minutes where we start to look a bit sloppy towards the end. I think Lee Tomlin again put another excellent shift in. I think Mitchell kept everything barring that goal out. Did very well with that as well. I think that the defensive injuries against Salford, I think that's the thing they were aiming for. I think that's the one thing Salford was aiming for. Take out the defence. I don't think that was there. I don't think they were doing it on purpose, but it seemed like they wanted to try and break down the defence in some way. I think that was the tactic for Salford. Try and break down our defence, and we try and break down theirs. And you know, they kind of did that because obviously Anderson got injured. We know he won't be available tomorrow. Noyle may be available tomorrow. Adam Long may be available tomorrow. But I have confidence in one young 18-year-old guy, one 18-year-old man for 70 minutes who absolutely shone off the bench, and that is Bobby Flaming Faulkner. This guy has a very exciting future for me. Future first-team starter. Real future first-team starter. He should be starting tomorrow, and I'll get on about that in my lineup prediction later on. But Faulkner did an exceptional job, you know, at right back, and then, you know, just overall, just his game was spot on. Proper no-nonsense centre-back attitude, and for me, Doncaster did very, very well in that game, barring those first 20 and last 10. But, you know, I think one player that I can take out of Salford's performance is Thomas Asante. I think he gets in the right areas, pushes for the right positions. Thomas Asante, for me, is a great attacking player who could be crucial for Salford going forward going into this season and into the following seasons as well. So, I don't think Salford will be any trouble. I think they could be up there in that promotion mix this season from what I saw from them last week and also what I've seen from the highlights of their performances beforehand. The thing with Salford for me is their attack still needs a little bit more work. Their creativity needs a little bit more work. But their defence is good. But somehow, to be fair, when you look back at the goals, you know, the first goal was a lovely curler from Carl Hurst. Don't think he meant it, but it still went in the back of the net anyway, so still a goal. And the second one, it was a great through pass from Lee Tomlin, split it open, and Carl Hurst with a beautiful finish. So for me, it took 2 special goals to break down Salford, which for me is a great thing for Salford's point of view, because to take 2 special goals to break them down is pretty good. And to be fair, last season we would not have had that quality in our bank account. We would not have had that quality in our bank. So we'd have probably lost that maybe 1-0 or drawn 1-1 out of it if we were snatching a set piece goal or something like that. Last season we'd have probably snapped a draw out of that or probably lost 1 or 2-0. If it wasn't for Salford's attack, we would have lost by 2 or 3 at times. So for me personally, that's another up from last season. We've got the creativity and the quality to break down Salford this time. So let's get into player ratings. Starting off with Jonathan Mitchell, I'm going to give him a 7 out of 10. I think, again, like I said, solid and did a good job. Back 4, Maxwell, Anderson, Williams, Noyle. Maxwell 7, Anderson 7, Williams 8 and Noyle 7. Maxwell did well. Anderson did alright. He did well before he went off. Noyle did alright as well. Williams, that guy impressed me so much, especially in the second half. First half, maybe a little bit, but second half is where he really shone. Really turned into an absolute brick house. That double block off the line in the second half was the main highlight for me. Just proper do anything to defend anything kind of behaviour and mentality from the defender. In the midfield 3, Clayton, Biggins, Rowe. Clayton and Biggins get 8, Rowe gets 7. Rowe still gets a high 7 because he still did very well. Clayton mastered the midfield exceptionally again. And Biggins, his work rate is phenomenal and his ability is improving game by game. He really is. In the front 3, I've gone with Hurst, obviously with Hurst, Tomlin and Miller. Hurst gets a 9. He's my man of the match for today, for last game. Tomlin gets an 8 and Miller gets a 7. Tomlin, 8. The reason being, exceptional again. Technically very good. Moves the ball in and out very well. The through ball for the second goal was fantastic. Miller up front, 7. Even though the goals didn't find his way in that game, he still was in the right area, still worked hard for everything, still pressed for most things. So Miller did well for me anyway. But Carl Hurst, man of the flaming match, 9 out of 10. I was struggling to really push it to a 10 out of 10 performance from Carl Hurst because, and the reason why it's almost a 10 out of 10 is because on and off the ball, he's exceptional. His movement on and off the ball was wonderful. His fluent movement, his way to round players, get in the right areas, get in the appropriate spots, launch the goals. Just overall, just an amazing player. And if I was Molyneux and Taylor and that, you're gonna have to work. You have to keep working extremely hard to get back in that side. Speaking of Molyneux, here's the subs. Long, Faulkner, Molyneux and Agard. Long 7. I think he didn't do too bad when he came on. Faulkner 8. Brilliant when he came on. Molyneux 7. Again, did well when he came on. Sure things up. And Agard 6 when he came on. I think, again, Agard didn't get the goal this time, but still made some kind of impact. Now, let's go looking ahead to our next opponent, and that is Northampton Town. Northampton Town Football Club, nicknamed the Cobblers, were founded on the 9th of March 1897, when a group of local school teachers got together with a well-known local solicitor, A.J. Darnell, also known as Pat, in the Princess Royal Inn, Wellingborough Road. Northampton to form the town's first professional football club. Problems were encountered before a ball was kicked, though, with the rugby club objecting to the club name Northampton Football Club. Arbitration was sought at the Football Association and the club was to be called Northampton Town Football Club. NTFC joined the Northern League UCL and spent just 2 seasons there, during which they recouped their first transfer fee for Frank Wall Howard from Derby County for £50, and later became a gatesman at the county ground. National headlines were made in October 1902, though, with a 1-0 win recorded over Portsmouth at Fratton Park, the first ever defeat at Fratton Park after an incredible 66 matches. It was going to be a tough start, though, in the Southern League, and the Cobblers twice finished bottom, mainly due to players being snapped up by league clubs who were able to pay better wages. Moving on in the future to the 1963-64 season, the Cobblers signed Bobby Hunt from Colchester United for £25,000, finishing 11th in Division 2. The following season saw Northampton finish Division 2 runners-up, just 1 point behind Newcastle United. The keeper Brian Harvey saved 7 penalties during that season, including 2 in one match against Southampton, which were taken by Terry Payne, the England penalty taker at the time. Now, of course, moving ahead further on into the future, the last ever match at the county ground in 1994, a 1-0 defeat at the hands of Mansfield, the start of a new era for Northampton Town, moving to SIXFIELDS, and a capacity crowd of, on Saturday 15th of October 1994, witnessed the first match at the new stadium, a 1-1 draw with Barnet, with the first scorer being Martin Aldridge. Now, moving ahead into Northampton's history, we have the juggernaut beginning to move in 2005-06, when the club secured automatic promotion to League One with a 1-0 victory over Chester at SIXFIELDS on April 2006, seeing wild celebrations begin. A squad with a backbone and strength of experience in the shape of Sean Dyche, Ian Taylor, Eoin Jess and Scott McLeish steered the Cobblers away from the clutches of League Two. Now, moving further ahead to the future, the playoffs, the potential playoff promotion for the Cobblers over in 2020-2021 were played behind closed doors due to the COVID-19 pandemic, and the semi-final first leg against Cheltenham saw the Robins win 2-0, but a stunning comeback in the second leg saw Northampton win 3-0 to progress to Wembley, but they lost to Exeter. But they beat Exeter 4-0 to return to League One. Now, of course, John Brady took over after Keith Curl and Colin West, the assistant, left in February 2021, initially on a caretaker basis before Brady became the permanent manager in the summer of 2021. As the Cobblers geared up for their League Two campaign in 21-22, Brady led the side to the playoffs in the first full season in charge, finishing with 80 points, just 4 points off the top of the table, and only denied promotion by a 7-0 win for Bristol Rovers over Scunthorpe on the final day of the season. This will be a very interesting season for Northampton, one I could think will be a charge to promotion. Now let's have a look a bit more into the game on Saturday with BBC Radio Northampton's Jake Sharp. So it is time for the interview section of the Matchday Launch Show. Yes, we're back with the interview section. We didn't get one last time, but we are here with it again. And we're here with Jake from BBC Radio Northampton. Jake, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
Not too bad, thank you. Great to have you on the show. So, Northampton Town then, why are they clicking this season after the disappointment of losing out on that automatic spot by that mirror margin from Bristol Rovers last season against Scunthorpe? How's it sort of clicked? Have they just learned from the pressure of last time and just ignored it and gone forward, or is it just a collective effort?
Yeah, it's a good question, because it could have gone one of two ways, couldn't it? This season could have started horribly. There could have still been that hangover, because I was there in Barrow when those scores were filtering through. After half an hour, the Cobblers were 3-0 up, and we're all planning for League One journeys next year. We're all thinking in the press box, Derby County, Pride Park will be a bit good, yeah, Ipswich, etc. The players could be forgiven for thinking the same thing. But then, of course, what happens at Scunthorpe and between Scunthorpe and Bristol Rovers happens. And that is an incredibly difficult thing to take as a professional footballer. Speaking to a lot of the players, speaking to the manager, what can you say to console a player? So, well, you did everything you could, really. What could you have done more? You went and won the game that you needed to win on the last day. In every other scenario, you're promoted to League One next year, and then they go into the playoffs, of course, and they lose. So you're right. It could have gone one of two ways. I think there's 2 points to this, and it all, as it will for every single club, filters down to recruitment. They've recruited extremely well, really well. Danny Hilton coming in from Luton is a statement signing from in League Two. Ben Fox impressed everyone for Grimsby. Josh Eppie has come back on loan last week as well. They've picked up some gems from the Premier League under-23s. Mark Leonard's looked great. Kieran Barry's looked great. The form of Sam Hoskins has been fantastic. And that's the second part, because they've kept a lot of players as well. And that is really important. You'll see it not just for Northampton Town, but for lower league football across the board, that these 10, 15 players leave, 10, 15 players come in. That didn't happen. They kept their most important players. There's 2 players they lost that they would have liked to have kept. That's Liam Roberts, the goalkeeper, who was excellent last year. He went to Middlesbrough, and Fraser Horsfall as well, the centre-back. He was excellent as well. He went to Stockport. But they kept the likes of Guthrie, the likes of Koike, the likes of Pinnock and Hoskins and McWilliams in midfield and Salby in midfield. There's a real settled base there. They've kept all the coaching staff in the background. So there was a real platform to build on, and that's exactly what they've done. Albeit a bit differently. They're scoring a few more goals. It's a bit more perilous than it was, but that's the real basis.
Yeah, it seems like Northampton have definitely hit the ground running this summer, and you could see that with the form as well. They're only 1 place above us, still unbeaten like us. What do you think? Do you think Northampton will finally get promotion this year? Do you think this year's finally the year, or do you think it's a lot harder looking back at last season? Do you think it's a lot harder this season with the teams in the division this year?
I think they're better placed this year in terms of the depth of their squad, in terms of, as I said, the manager's been there a year. He's learned his ropes. That was John Brady last year, the Cobblers boss, John Brady. That was his first year in league football management. Never managed a football league side before. He'd managed Brackley Town, a local non-league side in the National League North, but that was his first ever year. So he's got that behind him. Colin Calderwood's still there. There was heavy links that Calderwood would be leaving in the summer to Swansea. He stayed. So that relationship's growing. The players stayed, as I said, they've recruited extremely well. And they've got that experience now of being a side that people expect to be promoted. And I mean, if we look at it, they've had a really good start, points on the board wise. If you look at the table, you can't complain of that at all. 5 games, unbeaten, 3 wins, 2 draws. I'd give them a 6 out of 10 in terms of performance, and they do the same. There's plenty more to come from them. There's been some perilous moments. I think you guys know more than last-minute goals over the starts of the season as well. But as you say, there's some stiff competition in this league, and yes, we might have a look at the Stockports and Bradfords of this world who we thought might be a bit higher, but there's a hell of a long way to go in this League 2 season, and there's going to be some tough competition, but they've got that bit of know-how, the Cobblers, this year. And I think the fact they're picking up points so early, as they are now, without playing anywhere near their best, without having kept a clean sheet, which is what they did last year, which is what got them into the top 3, I think says a lot. And I think there's only, in terms of performance, room for improvement for the Cobblers, and points will come.
Yeah, I don't think we've seen the best from Northampton yet this season, and definitely going to be up there this season as well. Your view on Doncaster Rovers then? Obviously, we're unbeaten as well. We've made an unbeaten start. We seem to grab last-minute goals in a couple of games. The last game against Salford wasn't so last-minute. We grabbed the 2 goals and came from behind. Do you think it's going to be one of the toughest games of the season against Doncaster, or do you sort of look at this game and think, well, maybe there's something about this team that we can get over on this particular occasion?
I think this is by far the toughest game of the season for the Cobblers. And it's for a couple of reasons, really. It's never easy for a side. I mean, when we're making our predictions pre-season, I had Doncaster to finish in the playoff spots, but it's always a bit of a gamble when a side comes down from League One, because you never know, do you? It's all about recruitment. It's all about the attitude. It's all about, if you keep hold of those players that got relegated, do they really want to be playing in League 2? The manager as well, Gareth McSheffrey, see how he gets on. But you've started really well. And what makes me nervous ahead of tomorrow, from a Cobblers perspective, is these late goals that you score. Because I'm seeing it at Northampton Town. The character and the attitude is kind of dragging them through games at the moment. And that seems to be very similar in the case of Donny. So the amount of points that will earn you over the season, and what that will do to your season, to have that kind of, we'll play until the 96th, 97th minute every week, makes such a massive difference. I think it's going to be a proper test. Real test tomorrow at SIXFIELDS.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to getting down there and seeing the stadium for the first time as well tomorrow. In terms of the key men then from the Doncaster team that you're worried about the most, who would you sort of pick out as maybe 1 or 2 sort of danger men to watch out for? I mean, me personally, after the Salford game, my sort of danger men would be Lee Tomlin and Carl Hurst. I think after Bradford, you wouldn't have said Lee Tomlin, but no, he's come on leaps and bounds since Bradford, and Carl Hurst with that brace against Salford last week. I mean, he could be a really dangerous prospect now at the age of just 21, and there's other players in the squad as well, like James Maxwell's, and with Tom Anderson injured for tomorrow as well, that gives an opportunity for 18-year-old Bobby Faulkner to start, who is a really high-rated prospect for the future. Who would you say is the sort of danger players to watch out for from a Rovers point of view?
Yeah, certainly Hurst, as you mentioned. I mean, when you're 21 and you have that kind of ability and you have the kind of freedom that comes with that ability, don't you? You just want to play football. You just want to go out and express yourself. And that makes you very dangerous. And then at the other age scale, you mentioned Lee Tomlin. He fascinates me, Lee Tomlin, because before he joined Walsall the back end of last season, he was training with the Cobblers. They very much wanted to get him in. He played for Rushden and Diamonds back in his past as a club which has obviously gone out of business now. There's AFC Rushden and Diamonds. So he had links to the county, and they needed that player. They needed that little creative number 10, link the play, got some nous, got some guile about him as well. He would have been perfect to come in for the last 10, 15 games of last season, and they missed out on him, and they were disappointed. And I know people can make fun of his mobility, and that red card was comical against Bradford, but it's very similar to Danny Hilton that the Cobblers have got in a way. The experience and the class they have is leagues above League Two, and that shows. The physicality might not be there. That's why they might be in League Two at this stage of their career. But that class, that technical ability is always there. And the other one that always stands out to me, it just always seems a big name in this league, is Kieran Agard. Just always stands out to me. That another one that the Cobblers have been heavily linked with, especially when he was at MK Dons just down the road. And he just always seems to be a player that just pops up at the right moment. So yeah, you've got a couple of players that have me worried, and they are the kind of players, and that's an excellent mix as well. That mix of experience and youth and ability and physical ability, technical ability. It's a good mix.
Yeah, and it's going to be very interesting to see if we get a late 90th minute from the guy who I like to call now Ole Gunnar Agard. If you know, you know. Finally, then, score prediction wise, obviously I'll reveal mine later on in the episode. But what do you think the score's going to be at SIXFIELDS tomorrow? Do you think this an unbeaten run will come to an end, or do you think both teams will stay unbeaten?
In my mind, I think it's just got score draw written over it. And looking at the Cobblers and Doncaster over the last couple of weeks, it could be 3-3 and 0-0 going into the 90th minute as it stands. It's been absolutely ridiculous. I know on Saturday, Sam Hoskins scored a 97th minute corner for God's sake to get an equaliser for the Cobblers. I'm going to go 2-2. That's what I think it's going to be. The Cobblers just haven't clicked defensively yet. They've got a lot of options going forward. Sam Hoskins has been on fire, as you see. And even if Hoskins isn't playing well, the likes of Apray, Hilton, Pinnock, Eppier, there's firepower all over the pitch. And I think it's the same for Doncaster. So I'm going to go 2-2.
Interesting. So obviously Hoskins is a player I'm worried about, and obviously Danny Hilton as well, because if Rovers fans remember back last summer around deadline day, he was one of the listed alternatives to when we lost out to Will Grigg on deadline day. It was literally Will Grigg. He went to Rotherham. He was there the whole afternoon, so we wasted about 6 hours on deadline day. We had alternatives like Carl Joseph, Danny Hilton, Tom Eves, Kenneth Zahora on the list, and we went for none of them. So it's going to be really interesting to see if Hilton scores against us, because it might have been an interesting decision not going for him last year. But Jake, thank you very, very much for coming on the show today. Much appreciated.
No problem. Enjoyed it. Thank you very much.
And here is the next section of the Matchday Launch Show. So let's predict the next match day of games in Sky Bet League 2, starting off with AFC Wimbledon against Barrow. This is going to be a very interesting one, this one. Barrow have had a great start to the season. AFC Wimbledon will have to try and keep battling away. I think this could have a 2-2 draw over it. I think most people predict Barrow to win, but I think Wimbledon could scratch something out of this. Maybe it's a case of them coming from behind to snatch a draw, or they lead and Barrow sort of come into it and grab a point out of it, because Wimbledon don't usually hang on to leads that very, very well. So I'm going to go with a 2-2 draw in this one. Next up, Bradford versus Crewe, and I think again this could be a very interesting game. I think Crewe have had some good form. I think Bradford have had some good results. So I think that again it could be close, but I think Bradford's going to snatch this one. I'm going to go 2-1 Bradford. Next up, Carlisle against Gillingham. Gillingham have had a really struggling start to the season, and Carlisle have been decent so far. So I'm going to go with Carlisle to win this 2-0. I think Gillingham could be under some real pressure. Next up, Harrogate host Newport, and again this could be a very interesting game. Newport, some interesting results this past few weeks, and I think that Harrogate, I think again could have a very interesting season with the start they've made. So I'm going to go with a 1-1 draw on this one. Next up, Leyton Orient host Hartlepool, and Leyton Orient and Hartlepool, two former Vanarama National League sides just a few years ago. And again, I think this could be very interesting. I think Orient, though, with the unbeaten start, will definitely snatch this one. I think it'll be 3-0 Orient. I think Hartley could be in trouble at Hartlepool. Next up, Rochdale host Crawley Town, and this, for my opinion, is where Crawley Town start their season. I'm going to go with a 2-1 win for Crawley, and I think Rochdale are going to be under some really increasing pressure as they look out for their new manager. Next up, Salford against Stevenage. This is a tough game for Salford to try and get their momentum back up and running after their first defeat of the campaign to us. But don't get me wrong, Salford are still a good team, and I think they'll still be around those spots come the end of the season. But Stevenage have been great so far, so I think this could be a 1-1 draw. I'm going to go with a 1-1 draw, but I wouldn't be surprised if Stevenage snatched it. Next up, Stockport hosts Swindon. Again, this could be very, very interesting, but I think Stockport could be using that Carabao Cup defeat to Leicester on penalties as a way to really bounce back. And I'm going to go with Stockport winning this one 2-1. Next up, Sutton United host Mansfield, and I think, again, this could be a very interesting scoreline, but I'm going to go with Mansfield to win this one by 2-0. Next up, Tranmere host Colchester, and I think, again, it could be very, very interesting. This one, I think, will be a score draw, a 0-0. And finally, Walsall host Grimsby, and I think, again, Grimsby could snatch something out of this, but I wouldn't be surprised if Walsall won this one. So I'm going to go with, I'm going to upset the apple cart here. I'm going to go with a 2-2 draw on this one. But there is one game we still haven't predicted yet, and that is Northampton Town hosting Doncaster Rovers. And let's bring you my lineup prediction and then my score prediction. First up in goal, Jonathan Mitchell earned his spot, rightly so. The right move for me in goal. Back four, I've gone with Maxwell, Faulkner, Williams, and Noyle. I think Noyle will be fit for this game on the right hand side, and I think that Bobby Faulkner will be the one to partner Roshawn Williams, with Anderson being injured. In the midfield, Clayton, Rowan, Biggins. I think that's the decent midfield three I'd go with, the right midfield three to go with, and it's a consistent midfield three as well. And then finally in the front three, Hurst and Tomlin either side of Miller. Very, very simple there. Front three and midfield three stay the same. The back is where we make the changes. Now let's predict the scoreline for this particular match. So there we go, ladies and gentlemen. That is the lineup prediction. Now let's predict the score. Now, obviously, we heard 2-2. We had a draw from Jake from BBC Radio Northampton. It's going to be interesting, this one. I'm personally going to go with a 2-1 Rovers win. I think 2-1 Rovers is what I'm going to go with. And the reason why I'm going to go with that is because, as Jake said, Northampton's defence hasn't looked the best recently. So I think we can exploit that. Depends what kind of Northampton turns up. Because if they turn up in a certain form of attack, we could be under some pressure. And it'll be up to Roshawn Williams to pull out the second half they did against Salford. And for Bobby Faulkner to show what he did in the 70 minutes against Salford as well. It's really test our defence. And with Noel just coming back to fitness, this will be a real test for him and Maxwell as well. So, should be interesting to see what we do. Will the unbeaten start come to an end on Saturday? I really hope not. And if it doesn't come to an end and we do beat a really fancied Northampton team, then we really could be in for a good season this year. So, that is it for this video, guys. Make sure you do like, comment, subscribe. Thank you for watching another Matchday Launch Show. And for now, I am the CHALL, your YouTube sporting journalist and Doncaster Rovers fan. Keep living the Rovers life. That is full time. Rovers Tide Diet. And I'll see you for the next Matchday Launch Show on Monday ahead of the Papa John's Trophy game with Newcastle.